to get another city. So he says, whoever captures the city of writings can have my daughter as prize. You see, Axa, his daughter is a pawn in the game of power moves her father is playing. You see, often people in high places like to throw out ideas that may gain them something, and they don't think or care about how it impacts somebody's life. Axa was caught up in a system where other people were making decisions about her life. And I was thinking, Axa girl, in the words of Sophia from The Color Purple, I know what it's like. See, as a black woman living in the United States of amnesia, where people seem not to remember that black women have been getting crushed by decisions of white supremacy, sexism, and classism since the day they were brought to these shores. So I felt like Axa had some experience and some information that might could hope me and hope us, as the old folks would say. So I had a conversation with Axa. Now see, this may not make sense to some of y'all, but what I have learned is, as I've been journeying through this thing called life, I don't need to learn everything the hard way. Sometimes I can just listen and ask folks who have been through some stuff. We got to go back and talk to the people. So I'm reading and I'm listening to Axa after her father offers her up for a prize. Her new husband is now Othniel, who eventually becomes a judge. So I guess she could have did worse in terms of a husband. But she shows up doing things, and I'm like, Axa, these men were making decisions about your life. What's your position on this? And Axa said, I knew the way this system was set up, it wasn't meant for me. See, this system, certain men get to decide what I get, where I go, and who I go with. The system, the men don't care about my true value, and they undervalued me. See, that don't mean I was not deserving. I know the system, and I know me. Axa was watching what was going around her and within her, and I understood what she was saying, because Irie Lord has told me, in order to survive, those of us who oppression is as American as apple pie have always had to be watchers to become familiar with the language and the manners of the oppressor. But the thing, Axa didn't just watch the game, she figured out how to add another player. See, when things are happening all around us, we're watching. And we see things, we see the corruption, we see the injustice, we see the game being played, and often we're the ones being played. But we just can't keep watching. We might need to insert ourselves into the game so we can change the game and say game over. But I noticed Axa didn't just insert herself into the game, she changed the game. You see, Axa, you said men decide, and they decide what the dowry would be, what land you would get, and you show up giving instructions and telling your new husbands what to do. What part of the game is this? But Axa said, I know my worth. She said, my father gave me this land on the south side, which isn't considered the best. Maybe my father didn't think I was his worth as much as I know I'm worth. So I told Othniel to ask for more because I'm worth more. And I get that, because many times people in the world will try to make us believe that we are less than, especially people of color, women, and LGBTQ folks. See, but we are created in the image of God, who says it's good, so that means we worth something. We have value. Work and walk into your value. And in the words of Dr. Cannon, stop trying to shrink down to a size too small to fit us to please other people. Like Axa, know your worth. But after she tells Othniel to ask for more, the text actually says she urged him to ask for the land, but nowhere in the text does it say Othniel asked for the land. Axa gets off the donkey and talks to Caleb. Axa, what's really going on? This is not the way it's supposed to be done. Shouldn't Othniel be the one asking for the land? Axa told me, sometimes you can't keep waiting for somebody else to ask for what you need and what you want. You have to get up off your donkey and go ask for yourself. There are times when your voice is the one that needs to be heard. See, I see Axa, but your father must have known you wasn't playing, because when you walked up, he asked you, what do you want? Axa told me, like I said, my father knew when he gave me the land on the south side, it wasn't good because it was dry and didn't have access to clean water. And I know all about that, Axa, because people in Flint still drink the water. And right here in Dallas, we've had schools that had bad water. But she said I had to call him on his wrong, and I had to ask for what I want. I told him, you put me on the land in the south and most of the resources are in the north, so you need to give me something so we can survive and thrive too in the south. Yes, see, too often people with power, the haves and the have-mores, want to keep all the resources close to them while people are dying because they have lack of access to the resources. But Asa told him, give me a blessing, and you asked for water, but I noticed you didn't say give my husband the blessing and the water. You said give it to me. What's up with that, Asa? Asa said water is a life source, and I needed my own source. And see, I knew if I had a source to go to as a woman in this crooked system, then other women and people who needed it will also have access. She told him she needed a source of water, and Caleb gave her Upper Springs and Lower Springs. The fact is, she got what she asked for, although this was not the normal way of doing things. See, folks like to say, we have a certain way of doing things around here, and that's the way you should do it. Well, when I'm being oppressed and crushed by unjust systems, I'm not interested in doing things your way. The fact is, he gave it to her, and he knew the system well. But it shows that to do justice, folks in positions of power don't always have to go by the rules, especially when the rules been set up for certain people. But listening to Asa, I couldn't help but think of one of my favorite sheroes, Fannie Lee Hamer. See, I remembered how Miss Hamer fought to give voice to black people in the election process. She showed up to the 1964 National Democratic National Convention to be the official delegate from Mississippi, and Hubert Humphreys tried to negotiate with her and offered them 2 seats. Well, Miss Hamer told him, we didn't come this way for 2 seats when all of us is tired. Miss Hamer told him what she wanted, and they were all fully seated. See, we are followers of a liberating Jesus, and we didn't come all this way for just a few of us. See, we are committed to the survival of all people. So what I learned from listening to Asa and paying attention to those who have come before me like Miss Hamer is, in order for everybody to have what they need and not only survive but thrive, in order for us to have access to our own sources, we got to get off the donkey and go tell them what we want.
Continuing our sermon, tag teaming, I'll be reading from Mark chapter 7, verses 24 through 30. Mark chapter 7, 24 through 30. And the text reads like this. From there he set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know that he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syro-Phoenician origin. She begged, put a check next to the word begged. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. But she answered him, sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Then he said to her, for saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. Pray with me. Creator God in heaven, speak through me. Amen. Florence Spearing Randolph, a black woman preacher in the late 19th, early 20th century, despite her own distaste with the idea, was finally convinced that God had called her to preach. Similar to other preaching women before her, like Harriet Baker and Mary J. Small and Julia Foote, to answer that call, Randolph faced bitter opposition to her preaching ministry. Yet, because she believed it was God who gave the call, Florence Randolph refused to yield to the opposition. In Daughters of Thunder, a book by Betty Collier Thomas, she writes that Randolph gave up husband, home, and baby and all, determined to go out homeless and penniless alone with Christ, rather than reject the call of God to preach. In our preaching passage, we find another determined woman, a mother seeking. She was not seeking something for herself, but for her daughter, her ill daughter. In Matthew's gospel, the daughter is said to have been tormented by a demon. In my own book, yes, I have one, Murdered Souls, Resurrected Lives, I discuss I describe demon possession as any kind of internal suffering that distorts one's ability to reflect the imago Dei. Certain kinds of suffering, you see, can distort our self-identity. That is what we believe about ourselves, particularly when such suffering is the result of gender oppression or racial injustice or even sexualized violence. Certain kinds of suffering can cause human beings who were created in the image of God to believe that we are not who God says we are, fearfully and wonderfully made with the capacity for greatness. But this womanish mother did not appear to have such a self-understanding. And so she came to Jesus in the street, advocating for her daughter's healing. But Jesus said no. She came to a man she believed to be a holy man, one whom she had heard had within him the power to heal. But when she found him, at least at first, she experienced something else. How many of you have ever gone looking for one thing and to your chagrin found something else? You see, people go to church looking for safety and find danger. We go to the police seeking help, and some of us find death. This womanish mother went to Jesus seeking a positive reception and found rejection. And that rejection caused her to adjust her attitude and her conversation with him. Now remember, I asked you to put a check next to that word beg. Well, in this context, I discovered that the word beg has more than just one meaning. The word beg right there in that text means to question, as in a dialectic argument. In this context, the word beg functions to elicit conclusions from an opponent by means of questioning, kind of like in a debate. Two people on different teams pose questions to each other in hopes of winning the debate. This womanish mother wasn't confused. She knew she and Jesus were on two different teams. She didn't come to him looking for friendship. She understood who she was and who Jesus was. She was a Canaanite woman living in a primarily Jewish community. She was an outsider. The Canaanite people were of the most morally despised of all of Israelites' enemies, and Jesus was a Jew. This mother came prepared for his opposition. She came prepared for his no. But Jesus' no was not the end of the conversation. I wonder if he was surprised by her talkback, by her womanist sass. I describe her comportment as womanist sass to amplify the scholarship of New Testament biblical scholar Mitzi J. Smith. In her description of the phrase, Dr. Smith argues that a womanist commitment is manifest in her audacious, vocal, and vociferous pursuit of justice and freedom from disease and oppression. And so, Jesus' no to healing the daughter of the Syrophoenician woman summoned her womanist sass. You see, womanist sass shows up whenever black women, like canaries in a coal mine, sense danger to our families and our communities. Womanist sass shows up when we know that we have the answer, but patriarchy and a culture of white supremacy converge to silence and stifle our knowing. Womanist sass shows up when the doors of opportunity are closed shut, and we decide we're going to go through a window, take the hinges off the doors so that other oppressed groups can walk through the door. But what I find really curious is that Jesus listened to her sass. He heard argument. Jesus didn't tell her to go home. She went home when she was ready to go home. She went home when the job was done. She went home when she got what she came for. She went home when her daughter was healed. We'll go home, John MacArthur, when our sons and daughters are healed. We'll go home when women are free to pursue their God-inspired dreams. We'll go home when men are no longer infected by toxic masculinity and patriarchal Christianity. In this text, Jesus didn't tell her to go home. He wasn't repelled by her sass. He wasn't offended by it. He wasn't intimidated by it. No, he experienced it. He felt it. He submitted to it, as all good and wise men should. And I think I know why. Jesus was secure in his own male identity. And Jesus also was surrounded by womanish women. Women who spoke up, women who showed up, and women who stood up. Hell, his mama was a womanish woman. Jesus understood that God uses women in key ways to lead the way forward. Jesus also knew his Jewish history. Perhaps Jesus reflected on the words in Micah 6:4. Here's what it says. For I brought you up from the land of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of slavery. And I sent before you Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Wait, did that say Miriam? And Miriam. And is a conjunction hooking up words, phrases, and clauses. And Miriam. Miriam wasn't home cooking and cleaning. Miriam was sent to lead right along with the brothers. God did that. God did the sending. And because God did the sending, neither Moses, nor Aaron, nor anyone else in the community had a right to tell Miriam to go home. And even if they did tell her to go home, can't you just hear Miriam saying, I refuse to take no for an answer? You see, when God sends a woman and she knows that it was God who sent her, please get out the way. Please collaborate. Please support her. Please come alongside her. I believe the Syrophoenician woman was sent to Jesus. I believe that there was, as Dr. Renita J. Wing says, something within. There was something within this mother whereby she knew where her help would come from. And she listened to her own wisdom. She listened to the voice within her. And she went because she was sent. But how many of you know that when we're sent by God, it's always for a greater purpose than we imagined? Yes, this Syrophoenician mother was sent to Jesus to secure healing for her daughter, but there was more. What lessons were there for the watching community? What did they see when they observed this interaction between a woman outsider, a woman on the margin, and Jesus, a man with the power to heal or not? Were there other women who saw this exchange? Were there men who saw it? Were there men who saw Jesus double back and change his mind because a woman stepped to him and argued her case so effectively that Jesus changed his mind? Did the men notice that Jesus was so convicted by her questioning of him that it changed the trajectory of his ministry? And there is still more. What lessons would the watching community share with the little daughter as she grows up and develops her own womanish ways? What will they tell her about how her mama advocated for her? How her mother wasn't too proud or too scared to beg one time? What will they tell her about why her mother tolerated a man calling her a dog one time so that she could get her the healing that she needed? And still, there's more. We are here tonight in this space because there were women who refused to take no for an answer. Women who were sent to people who had what they needed, thank you, Ken, to create a space of healing and safety and transformation. Some said no. But these women refused to take no for an answer. And despite the no's, they still curated transformative conversations on race and racism. Why? Because we were sent. Some said no, and we still show up every week and share the word with thousands of folk on social media platforms. Why? Because we were sent. We, like the Syrophoenician mother, will refuse to take no for an answer until that no comes from God. Then we'll ask God, what's next?